back to Walking in Spirit of Truth, and my name's John Craig, and it is great to be with you on another adventure here in the Book of Jubilees. We've been out for a couple weeks, and so glad that you were able to stick with me. And remember that Tuesday night we go live, and here we go. Make sure you spread this out, like, share, and subscribe, and let everybody know. Let those that join us usually send out a text, send out an email, say, "Hey, don't miss it. We're live. We're up and running." And we're going to pick up right where we had left off in chapter 14 of the book of Jubilee. And remember, when we're doing this study, this is not like a study Bible study and we're going to pull it apart. And this is an adventure so that we can kind of experience what was going on as it was described to Moses, who was up on the mountain when he got this download. Quite a download, isn't it? There's a lot of information, a lot of details. And so this is where we've been going. Yeah, Terry, you ready to take a walk? This is a journey, so we are walking through it. And we want to give it a perspective that comes from where we've been, what we've walked through, and kind of where we see these writings that take us back to the pre-Brit Hadashah. And even in this one, where we know that where by the documentation of the text itself said it comes from Moses. So that's just a long ways back, a long ways to look at some things in perspective and say, you know what, we have believed this, and we don't see necessarily specific details within the Old Testament in the Tanakh as much as when we read some of these what we call extra biblical Bible books, and that were at once included with the Bible, with the scriptures, but nevertheless, we see a lot of maybe say teachings, doctrine, biblical doctrines that are taught, and they're revealed here. It's like, well, you know, did you ever think about this? When we've heard, back in the days that we were going to a Sunday church and all that, and the preacher was preaching particular doctrines and he's reading these things out of the New Testament, did you ever think that maybe just maybe he got some of that information from these extra biblical books and then pulled it out of the New Testament to teach us, and then but did reference back to these because it wasn't acceptable? you know I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. But but when it just spells out the scriptures as clearly as it does, and spells out the things that we've held tightly as a part of our belief system, and it kind of removes a lot of conjecture, and it's like, well, here it is. This is what it says. Well, that's why I like the journey. The journey is about knowledge. It's about, walking through some of the things that our forefathers walked through. I mean, that's interesting in a historical, right? But in regards to this interdimensional relationship that our forefathers had with the Most High and with the angelic, and with these things that take place that are not natural, it connects us with the supernatural. And that's why I love this journey that we're going on, because it pulls these details out. And so it's chapter 14, Terry, chapter 14. So that's where we left off last time. By the way, if you're wondering to know who we are at Life of Worship Ministries, my wife and I pastor Life of Worship here in Amarillo, Texas, and we meet on Shabbat at 12 p.m. Central Time, and where we do a Torah portion, the last couple hours, and we also broadcast it on our Life of Worship Ministries YouTube channel. And we'd love for you to join us there. If you're not in Amarillo, that you can join us on the channel and be part of the midrash, be part of the conversation that goes on with our chat room that takes place. And then we take an hour break, and we come back at 3 p.m. Central Time for a time of praise, worship ministries, followed up by a second stream, which is the message, Yah willing. And so we've been off for a couple weeks, Sandy and I mean, a couple weekends. It was just basically a week off, with bookended by 2 weekends, where we had our anniversary, and was we're able to take a break to get some things taken care of around, well, with our house and with the Plainview house and some things like that. So, nevertheless, um, we're going to be back on Shabbat. So join us on Shabbat, and we will be. Those of you that are local, yes, we'll be back at the Staybridge Hotel, and we'll see you over there. It'll be great to get together once again. And then let's see, was there anything else I needed to say? Oh yeah. Oh, I do want to, this is very, very important. Those of you who gave during the month of December, whether you gave locally, even though we didn't meet in the last two, we didn't meet physically in the last two Shabbats, but we did provide some rewinds from our past, and I hope that you enjoyed those. But those that have given online, uh, and or that you gave locally and you brought it by our house, we want to say thank you so much. I was able to get all of our storage units paid and caught up and paid in full, and that was a big burden. And also, it's going to help because our insurance payment is due at the end of the month. You got to have insurance on everything. So those, and not only that, but the uh, other type of bills that we have, phone bills and things that go along with the ministry. You guys have been a blessing, and I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I know if Sandy were with me right now, she'd be saying the same thing, because you guys helped us pull that out there at the end of the year. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your generosity. If you'd like to give and be a financial partner with us, you can go to our website at www.lifeofworshipministries. I'm sorry, lifeofworshipamarillo.org. There it is on your screen. And just go to, if you're on a computer, just go to the top of the page. There's a tab that says donate. Go to that tab and click the donate button, and it'll take you over to our account where you can donate online. Or if you'd prefer, on our homepage at the very bottom is our mailing address, and you can just mail your love gift, your tithe, your offering, however you always leading you, to just mail it directly this direction. So we certainly appreciate everybody that partners with us. And you say, well, I can't give at this point in time, or I give to other ministries. No, that's fine. We do want you to partner with us and be part of our prayer team, prayer support, and also be praying with us when we're online. And because we want the Spirit of Yah to move. And there's no distance whenever we meet. Just remember, because when we're praying for the sick, whether if it's locally or if it's abroad, there is no distance in our prayer. And that's what we're supposed to do as part of the body, right? Is to minister to one another. And through prayer, things change, and supernatural things take place. All right, let's jump into it. And chapter 14 in the book of Jubilees, and where we had left off in chapter, we left off it on verse 11. Yeah, verse 10, verse 11. And yet, if you will go over, if you look at the beginning of the chapter, you'll know exactly what's happening. And that's where I want us to take a look at. It says, because it's the timeline, because this is Avram who's complaining about not having a son. He'd been promised a son. He'd been promised descendants. And he's like, I don't have any descendants. What am I going to do? Everything that I have, it's going to go to my servant, Eliezer, the Damascan. And so, I'm childless and I need some help here because you promised. Well, uh, so that's the context that we're in. And I think it is over in Genesis chapter 15. I think that's, or Genesis chapter 12. Let's go back and look at that and see exactly where we are. If you're going to want to go back to the Torah and see where this is at. And yes, it's the dividing of the pieces. It's chapter 15. And so uh, Avram, in what we see in the scripture, and I love these things because it's parallels, and there's kind of like, the scripture is good. I mean, there's absolutely no flaw in it. And it's great for teaching and understanding and edification and doctrine and all of that sort of thing. And that's what the scripture gives us. And then but we don't see any conflict with it when we're reading out of Jubilees about the same event. There's no conflict, but it kind of fills in like maybe some blanks, maybe some expands upon it, like the Amplified Bible. Anybody ever use the Amplified Bible? Did y'all use that? I did. I did for quite a while. It's kind of like reading the scripture and all of the strong concordance packed into all the words. So it gets very wordy, and so that's kind of a reason I don't reuse it very often anymore. But because it's pretty wordy. But nevertheless, this is where we're at, and in verse 6, this is where we also get that phrase, and he believed, Abraham, he believed in Yahweh, and it was counted to him for righteousness, because it's like, look at the stars, and so shall your seed be. And he believed Yahweh, and it was counted for him for righteousness. And so, hey, check that out. Jackie is with us. Sweet. That's great, Jackie. You figured it out. Jackie, I didn't get to see you for the last 2 Shabbats to give you a hard time. So I'm glad to see you here in the room with us today. It's all good. What would we do without you? Right? Exactly. Okay. Not to okay. Not to just call you out or anything like that, but you're the best, Jackie. Appreciate it. Okay, here we go. And then, so let's start with verse 9 then, or pick it up at verse 9. And it says, and he said unto him, take me a heifer of 3 years. Write it down, Pastor. Enjoy this. I will, Jackie. All right, so going back to this. Take me a heifer of 3 years, and a goat of 3 years, and a sheep of 3 years, and a turtle dove, and a pigeon. I'm sorry. I appreciate that you have a good sense of humor, Jackie. That's all I can say. We need more people like you. And he took all these things in the middle of the month. This is verse 10. And he took all these things in the middle of the month. And he dwelt at the oak of Mamre, which is near Hebron. Okay. So where was it in 14, verse 1? We're talking about after these things in the 4th year of this week. So a week, when it says of this week, the 4th year of this week, we're talking about a 7-year period. And the 4th year in that 7-year period. And then it says, when the word of Yahweh came to Abraham in a dream. And it also says on, or there's a little translation bias going on here. So I'm just going to have to say at the first of the month of the 3rd month. Well, the first of the month of the 3rd month, isn't that like getting very close to Shavuot? I have to say it would be. All right. So now let's go back to verse 10. And he took all these things in the middle of the month, and he took all these things, and he took all these animals in the middle of the month. So when would that be? In the middle of the month of the 3rd month. Would that possibly be a particular feast day? You tell me what feast day it would be that's in the middle of the month of the 3rd month. You got it, Tammy. Yes, you get the prize tonight. Give yourself, well, you'll have to go get a sticker, but go get yourself a sticker with like a big smiley face. All right. You know, we used to love getting stickers when we got things right, like right in school and stuff. You got a sticker. Okay. Let's get to it. Let's get down to it. You can tell I've been out for a little bit. I need to get back into track here. Okay. And he took all these things in the middle of the month, and he dwelt at the oak of Mamre, which is near Hebron, and he built there an altar and sacrificed all these, and he poured their blood upon the altar, and divided them in the midst, and laid them over against each other. But the birds divided he not. Well, so he's talking about he's laying out the pieces, but I have to say it says it laid against each other. I think in the translation, it's like they're side by side, and maybe enough for a gap to walk between, because that's the way you would do. Uh, so if you, I mean, that's how they did the different covenants. You'd walk between the pieces. So it's not like against each other where they're overlapping or whatever, uh, against each other in terms of opposite of each other along a line or a path. And and so he poured the blood on the altar and divided them in the midst and laid them over against each other. But the birds divided he not. Uh, and birds came down upon the pieces, and Avram drove them away and did not suffer the birds to touch them. Okay, we know that from Genesis. Yeah, he kept them away. And it came to pass when the sun had set, then it's okay. Get this. This is what an interesting translation. Um, I'm reading from the Sefer version. And it came to pass when the sun had set that an ecstasy fell upon Avram. An ecstasy fell upon him. And lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And it was said unto Avram, know of a surety that your seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. And they shall bring them into bondage and afflict them 400 years. And the nation also to whom they will be in bondage will I judge, and after that they shall come forth thence with much substance. All right, so they're going to go down, they're going to be afflicted, but they're going to come out with abundance. Okay, well, like the wealth of the wicked stored up for the righteous. We've heard that before. And you shall go to your fathers in peace and be buried in a good old age. Wouldn't you wouldn't you love to have those words spoken to you, that in the sense, like for Abraham, is that you're gonna have a good life, and it's gonna, and it's you're gonna be, and you should go to your fathers in peace. I mean, it's like, uh it's gonna be great, and it's not gonna be a horrible ending of your life, and you're just gonna be buried at a good old age. And you think, wow, just going out not with a bang, but I'm telling you, going out strong. Isn't that how we all want to be? Let's just go out strong. That's why it's been very important. It's been kind of a journey that I've been on. It's not only going back to the time that we, years and years, I mean, decades ago, about understanding what the scriptures say about healing. Very important. It's like, well, I understand that being in the natural realm, that we are limited, and I don't want to be super limited by only having white coat doctors, and prescriptions in order to get through ailments. Not to say that any of that's wrong or that there's not a purpose for it, but ultimately we don't want that long term. We want to be healed, and that's been part of the journey of understanding, what does the scripture say about healing. What is y'all's heart on that? And then if it's his heart, and therefore, and his will, then what is it that might be barriers to us from receiving our healing, and that type of thing, and ultimately going to that uh living life, and understanding even that there's processes of healing. There's supernatural healing, and sometimes there's a process of healing, and that Yahweh's given us every herb bearing plant. Well, you can only put so many herbs on your food. Gourmet chefs use different herbs for their cooking, but there's a lot of different herbs and varieties and plants that are out there that are actually designed for medicine, and that the pharmaceuticals try to copy, but the pharmaceuticals have side effects leading up to and including death. And that's not a good thing. So to live life and be buried in a good old age, to me, and it's always been okay. Uh, no pharmaceuticals, because they list all the things, the side effects. Um, but this is what Yahweh says about it, and supernatural healing is part of it. But there's also process healing, where by uh, proper diet, exercise, and even particular supplements. That what do we have? we have a prescription for life and ways to excel and also be able to maybe experience what Avram, which was part of their life that we don't get the details on. But when they were sick, did they get the um, hyssop that grows out of the rocks, out of the stone walls and stuff, and uh, make some type of tincture and take that? Because why? Because that's oil of oregano. I mean, which is a very, very potent antibiotic, antiparasitic, a number of different things. So, what did they have, and what, why not discover these things and utilize the natural remedies that Yahweh's provided? Okay, because I want to, because why? There's no side effects, and the healing process. Um, can take place and also um, then be able to live our lives in peace and then be buried in a good old age. So it just makes me think about that when I'm reading that verse and I'm thinking about, wow, okay, if this is Avram, um, and that Yahweh is not a respecter of persons outside of any catastrophic type of accident or anything like that, then can we reverse things that are already going on and decaying within our bodies because we've abused our bodies or because um, we've had pharmaceuticals or because one reason or another we live in an age where there's all these additives in the food and the stuff that they put in the air and the water and all that sort of stuff and we just didn't know better, and now we're dealing with that. But how about reversing it? And so well, Rick, I would agree that we do have the supernatural healings in the Bible that were not a process, and yet that we do have the evidence of people that, and I don't have any specific examples of, but one of the things that I'm going to be, because we're going to continue talking about healing at Life of Worship, and so we're gonna explore those things, and but I do also know that when we go back and we look at the sons of Zadok, that one of the things that they were known for was um, remedies for healing. So uh, yes, I like the supernatural process, and yet sometimes we walk through a process of healing because there's something that Yahweh's break is building within us. So we've got to explore that, and we're gonna look and see what the scriptures say about that. The sons of Zadok, if you go back and look at some of the Second Temple writings, it actually talks about them being healers and having different types of ointments and herbs and um, uh, concoctions or whatever that they did use to administer to those that were sick. And outside of the other side of thing is like an accident where you have a broken bone or there's stitches or something like that, then that's a whole nother process. And it's great to have medical technology for that. And even some of the medical technology that's available, like when we were doing in the war room, we were praying for in the war room where Tammy had put in that they have this amazing uh, machine. Was it Echo, something like that? Tammy, you can put it in there. Uh, but it was an amazing machine that oxygenates, and so that the lungs could heal, and so but it still provided the oxygen within the body. Crazy. All right, so um, let's go verse 16. But in the fourth generation they shall return hither, for the iniquity of the Emerim is not yet full. Well, who are the Emerim? Those are the Amorites, and who are the ones that are occupying the promised land. And it wasn't full, not yet full. And there's a maturing. Isn't it kind of interesting how we think about that process, that there's a maturing of sin? And I guess we never want to let that ever happen in our lives, that where the maturing of the sin in other words, there's a boiling point or there's an overflow point, and that was what was going on in the land, is that it just hadn't gotten that wicked until um, the fourth generation of Abraham's descendants who went down to Egypt. Verse 17, and he woke from his sleep and he arose, and the sun had set, and there was a flame, and behold, a furnace was smoking, and a flame of fire passed between the pieces. Oh, by the way, kind of thinking about this, in the book of Tobit, there is there's actually different things that the angel Raphael was um, in his interactions with Tobit and the family, there was a process that required there was like a delayed healing where Tobit went blind, and but eventually healing came, but it was through the process of this relationship that he had with Raphael. It was kind of like this old man, and then when the healing finally came, it was miraculous. But Tobit had to wait. There was a process of him waiting. Um, and a lot of times healing isn't necessarily directly related to and I mean, it can be just an illness, something broke down in the body. Sometimes it needs there needs to be, maybe there's a curse that needs to be broken, or a deliverance needs to take place, because that is like an obstacle in the way. We'll dig into that, and we'll look to see what the scriptures say about that ectomo machine. I knew that, and I probably said it wrong. Sandy said it right on um, the other day on the war room yesterday morning. So yeah, machine oxygenates the blood while lungs heal. Crazy. I mean, I love that technology. It's great. And where did that wisdom for that technology come from? I mean, how did they even come up with that? Uh, Divine inspiration? Or some people would say, well, maybe it's because they consulted with the dark realm in order to give it. I'm not even going to go there. Just have to say all good things come from Yahweh. So, all right, let's go on. But in the fourth generation, they shall return hither, for the iniquity of the Amorim is not yet full. Verse 17, and he woke from his sleep, and he arose, and the sun had set, and there was a flame, and behold, a furnace was smoking, and a flame of fire passed between the pieces. Whoa. So what was this ecstasy? I mean, it used that. Why did they translate it ecstasy? Whereas in the scriptures it says that he fell into a deep sleep, and when you look into the Hebrew, it speaks about like a trance-like state. But in other words, but I think if you just sum it all together, we've talked about in the Torah portions, it's simply this: is that he was unable in that state to participate in the walking between the pieces, that only Yahweh, which I believe in the form of Yeshua, in that who is the smoking furnace. It was only in that form. Like I said, I believe it was Yeshua. But a furnace was smoking, and a flame of fire passed between the pieces, because it's the same type of thing it's the same imagery that led the children of Israel out of Egypt. So, and he spoke from his sleep, and he arose. And so we have the flame of fire passed between the pieces. Avram couldn't do it. So the full weight of the covenant rests upon Yeshua. Why do we know it rests upon Yeshua? Because when the covenant's broken, there's not two parties by which the breaking of the covenant would mean death. It's a death sentence. May my life be as these animals that have been cut into pieces. In other words, they're dead. If I break this covenant, but that's why both parties walk through it. But when there's just one party, then that one party bears the burden of both sides. And if either side breaks the covenant, then death comes upon the one who walked between the pieces. So who walked between the pieces? Well, who died because of the covenant? Well, we know that was Yeshua. So therefore we can come back to this point in time and say with certainty that it was Yeshua that walked between the pieces. And because he bore upon his body the all of the consequences of this treason against the covenant that the children of Israel um, made. So what a very sad day that was, and yet Yeshua said, "Okay, I walk between the pieces, then I'll be the one." Verse 18, and on that day Yahweh cut a covenant with Avram, saying, "To your seed will I give this land, and from the river Mitzrayim unto the great river, the river Parath, the Kenanim, the Kenzaim, the Kadmonim, the Perizim, the Raphaim, the Pakarim, and the Shivaim, and the Emerim, and the Kenaim, and Kenaanim, and the Girgashim, and the Yavusim." Wow, there's a lot of different words, but yeah, we're talking about, look at all the people that are occupying the land, and they belong to Avram. That's basically what it is, his descendants. And the day passed, and Avram offered the pieces and the birds and their fruit offerings and their drink offerings, and the fire devoured them. And the fire devoured. Wow. So the fire that's walking between the pieces devours the pieces. Avram laid them out as that offering, and the fire consumed them. Can you just picture that? This flaming, what he describes as this flaming torch going between the pieces, and they're just consumed as the presence of the fire goes between them. Wow, what an amazing thing. And just think about the picture, the imagery. I would love to see, put that on the big screen. Now that would be really cool. Put that on the big screen where they just burn up into ashes as the that's I never, you don't really see that in Genesis chapter 15 as you see it coming out. Maybe it's my imagination going wild. So put it on the shelf if you don't agree, but I'm getting that imagery right now. And on that day, we cut a covenant with Abraham according as we had covenanted with Noah in this month. Huh. Isn't it something that Shavuot has a greater meaning than just when the fire fell? Or when we say when the fire fell on the people in the upper room, and we can go back because this was the time that the fire walked between the pieces. Yeah, that really enhances the upper room experience. That being up in that upper portico of the temple when the fire came down on the 120, that is really amazing because it says that the tongues of fire split, and it was on where it was on each person's head. Whoa! Totally consumed in his presence. Yeah, that's it, Terry. Whew. I could just stop right there. I'm just we just need to have a time of praise and worship. Okay, and Avram renewed the feast and ordinance for himself forever, because it would be the same as Noah, because of the events that happened in Noah that correspond with this day. And Avram renewed the feast because Noah was supposed, and his sons were supposed to celebrate the day. This day. We read that before in Jubilees, and the sons did not continue with it. Yeah, that'll preach. Okay, so, and Avram rejoiced and made all these things known to Sarai, his woman, not his wife, his woman. Okay, and he believed that he would have seed, but she did not bear. Ouch. And Sarah advised her man Avram. So it goes both ways. Her woman, his woman, and her man Avram, and said unto him, just go into Hagar, my Mitzri maid, Mitzri, almost misery maid, my Mitzri maid, my Egyptian maid, and it may be that I shall build up seed unto you by her. And Avram hearkened to his voice, he hearkened unto the voice of Sarai his woman, and said unto her, do so. And Sarai took Hagar, her maid, the Mitzri, the Egyptian, and gave her to Avram, her man, to be his woman. And he went into her, and she conceived and bore him a son, and he called his name Ishmael in the 5th year of this week. And this was the 86th year in the life of Avram. He just needed to hold out a little bit longer, didn't he? But this is very interesting to me because it almost hints. Tell me what you think about this. It almost hints, because we don't necessarily see it as much within the scripture. It's just like, well, here's my handmaiden, take her and have a child by her. And so it's like, but he just violated the marriage. And yet here it's like Sarai, gave her to Avram, her man, to be his woman. It was just described earlier that it said Sarai, his woman. And I was kind of making a joke, Sarai, his wife. Why do you call it the woman, his woman? I'm married to my woman. Um, why didn't he say my wife, his wife? And so, but if we're keeping the same understanding, defining scripture by scripture, defining the taking this word, defining it with its word in the same sense, she gave Hagar to be his wife as well. And then we are thinking, well, therefore he's not committing adultery because she has become his second wife. We'll put that on the shelf and think about that. Chew on that a little bit. And he went in unto her, and she conceived and bore him a son, and he called his name Ishmael in the 5th year of this week. This was his 86th year in the life of Avram. So that also goes back and tells us that a year later, so sometime after this vision, no, it was like right away. It's like, well, Sarah's like, well, it's not happening between us, so let's kind of help this thing along and take her. And so, she conceives in that same year, and the child's born in the next year, the 5th year, because we're in the 4th year of the week. That would be the 5th year of the week. I mean, they got busy right away, huh? Okay. Well, Abraham, we've talked about that. They birthed an Ishmael. They jumped the gun. They weren't waiting for the supernatural birthing of the process, which would bring forth in Isaac. They just jumped the gun and said, okay, let's here's our plan. Because there's always man's plan and then there's Yahweh's plan. And how many times we just jump the gun and we just go to our plan first, and we think, and okay, I know I have this promise, and so here's my plan, and y'all just bless it. Just bless what I'm doing, okay? But if it's not his plan, why should he bless it? And then how many times that plan just does not work out because we birthed an Ishmael, right? Chapter 15. Here we go. And in the 5th year of the 4th week of this Jubilee, in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, Avram celebrated the feast of the first fruits of the grain harvest, and he offered new offerings on the altar, the first fruits of the produce unto Yahweh. Okay, now wait a minute. He's like, is this first fruits? No, it's not first fruits. This is because it's the wheat harvest that's celebrated at Shavuot. And because it said it's the middle of the month of the 3rd month. So again, we're back here to Shavuot again, and he's celebrating it. So it's a year later that he's celebrating. And we know that Ishmael was born. And it seems to be at this point in time, based on what we just finished up in chapter 14. So, and he offered a new offering on the altar, the first fruits of the produce unto Yahweh, a heifer and a goat and a sheep on the altar as a burnt sacrifice unto Yahweh. And their fruit offerings and their drink offerings he offered upon the altar with frankincense. And Yahweh, appeared to Avram and said unto him, I am El Shaddai, walk before me and be perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly. And Avram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him and said, Behold, my ordinance is with you, and you shall be the father of many nations. Neither shall your name any more be called Avram, but your name from henceforth even more shall be Avraham, for the father of many nations have I made you. And I will make you very great, and I'll make you into a nation, and kings shall come forth from you. And I shall establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you through their generations for an eternal covenant, so that I may be an Elohim unto you and to your seed after you, and unto the land where you have been a sojourner, the land of Canaan, that you may possess it forever, and I will be your Elohim. Wait a minute, stop right there. Isn't that interesting? That what we had was the walking between the pieces, which seems to have fallen upon Shavuot, and Yahweh spoke to him, revealed himself to him. We have this covenant made, and then 1 year later on Shavuot, we have something that's taking place. Is Yahweh begins? Avram brings an offering, and then Yahweh speaks to him on Shavuot. Huh. I think this is also pretty amazing. Is that we should come with great expectations on our next Shavuot, considering when you have Shavuot, the second chapter of Acts, when you have the outpouring of the Spirit, it's like, well, what a commemoration! But it's a very, very powerful event. But for Abraham personally, we have two right in a row that's life changing for him. And of all things, he's telling him, you're going to be the father of many generations. You're going to have a lot of nations come out of you. And he's basically telling him, I've got this covenant, and I'm giving it to you again, but this is after Ishmael, as if Yahweh just ignored the birthing of Ishmael and saying, I have a plan for you that will be fulfilled. Verse 11, and Yahweh said to Abraham, and as for you, do you guard my covenant? Is that a question? Do you guard my covenant, you and your seed after you, and circumcise ye every male among you, and circumcise your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of an eternal covenant between me and you. And the child on the 8th day you shall circumcise every male throughout your generations, him that is born in the house, or whom you have brought with money from any stranger, whom you have acquired, who is not of your seed. And that is born in your house shall surely be circumcised, and those whom you have bought with money shall be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an eternal ordinance. And the uncircumcised male, who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin on the 8th day, that soul shall be cut off from his people, for he has broken my covenant. And Elohim said unto Abraham, as for Sarai, your woman, your wife, your woman, her name shall no longer be called Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her and give you a son by her. Okay. And I will bless him, and he shall become a nation, and kings of nations shall proceed from him. And Avram fell on his face and rejoiced and said into his heart, shall a son be born to him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 99 years old, bring forth? And Avram said unto Elohim, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. And Elohim said, yea. And Sarah also shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Itzhak. and I will establish my covenant with him, an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, also have I heard you, and behold, I will bless him, and I'll make him great, and multiply him exceedingly, and he shall beget 12 princes, and I shall make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Yitzhak, whom Sarah shall bear to you in these days, in the next year. And he left off speaking with him, and Elohim went up from Abraham. Wait a minute. This is interesting because of the timeline that it's discussing. And these things in the fourth year of this week, in and it said, and then the fifth year of the fourth week of this Jubilee. Okay. All right. It's almost like we jump forward in time in the fifth year. It's not like a year later because this is almost as if okay, the cutting of the pieces, because in the cutting of the pieces in the book of Genesis, we have when he's 99 in chapters 17, 13 years have passed after Hagar bore Abram a son. And in 17, and when Abram was 99 years old, that's when Yahweh appeared to him. So there's more behind this discussion because we're talking jubilees. We're talking about 50-year periods, and the Shemitahs, the 7-year periods that make up those 50 years, and so it's very interesting because it makes it feel like it's the next year based on what I was reading, but maybe I didn't understand it right. As if he's getting this word from Yahweh. He says, okay, you're going to have to do the circumcision thing because it was when he got the circumcision thing and he was under the circumcision sickness is when Yeshua and the two angels showed up at his camp because it was on the third day of the circumcision sickness. That's what they called it. Not always linear. You're right, Rick. Not always linear. I always like to think that way because I'm Western, right? We grew up in the West, so we always want to think linear, but you know, and it could be translation issues. It could be things that were dropped in the text. It could be a number of different things. It could be that, but nevertheless, we're getting the same type of storyline, and the storyline is that a covenant was made, and then there's the there's the circumcision and the promise that Itzhak would come. And it's also interesting that Itzhak which means he laughs, um, would be given as the name before we see the the Torah's perspective that Sarah laughed. And even Abraham laughed. I mean, let's just get real. Abraham laughed before Sarah laughed, and yet she was called out as the one that was laughing, inside herself. So, all right. Yeah, I always think about that as well. But okay, let's go on. Where are we at on time? Okay, we still have time. And but nevertheless, we get this at this point in time. I mean, we think back in time. We think, well, look what happened to Ishmael and Ishmael, the battle of Ishmael and Esau, joining together as forces against Israel in the end days. And you think, what was it about Ishmael and his 12 sons that they wouldn't follow the faith of their father Abraham? Why would they be distanced from it? I mean, what was it about that relationship that caused them? Well, I guess it's the same thing with the sons of Noah, where two of the sons of Noah just began to worship other gods. Right? Okay. Disturbing. So, and Avram, verse 23, did according as Elohim had said unto him, and he took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and whom he had bought with money, and every male in the house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin. And on the self same day was Abraham circumcised, whew, and all the men of his house, and all those whom he had brought, or whom he had bought with money from his children, of the strangers were circumcised with him. This Torah is for all generations forever, and there is no circumcision of the days, and no omission of one day out of the 8 days, for it is an eternal ordinance, ordained and written on the heavenly tablets. And everyone that is born, the flesh of those whose foreskin is not circumcised on the 8th day, belongs not to the children of this covenant, which Yahweh made with Abraham, but to the children of destruction. Nor is there moreover any sign on them that he is Yahweh's, but he is destined to be destroyed and slain from the earth and be rooted out of the earth, for he has broken the covenant of Yahweh Eloheinu. Ouch. That's that's pretty powerful words right there. For all the angels of his presence and all the angels of sanctification have been so created from the day of their creation. And before the angels of the presence of the angels of sanctification, he has sanctified Israel, that they should be with him and with his holy angels. And do you command the children of Israel and let them observe the sign of his covenant for their generations as an eternal ordinance, and they will not be rooted out of the land? For the command is ordained for a covenant, that they should observe it. I mean, look at the details it's putting in to this discussion about the circumcision that we don't necessarily see within the scripture. And it's like saying, this is really important. It's like if there's an exclamation point, like in Spanish, if you have an emphatic sentence, you can put the exclamation point not just at the end of the sentence, but also at the beginning of the sentence, upside down. But nevertheless, it's like putting two exclamation points on this command. Excuse me. For the command is ordained for a covenant. The command is ordained for a covenant. Uh, I know, Terry, that's always wondered why when they were in the wilderness that they waited until they crossed the Jordan River and then they were circumcised, which means that whole generation had not been circumcised. I mean, it's like how did that message not get to the children of Israel when Moses got the download? Oh, okay. For Ishmael, verse 30, and his sons and his brothers and Esau, wait a minute. Yahweh did not cause to approach him, and he chose them not because they are the children of Avram, because he knew them, but he chose Israel to be his people. This is an interesting insert. It's like, I'm just going to tell you something because I'm going to tell you something about Ishmael and Esau, and look, they're not part of it. They're not part of this circumcision covenant. If you want to be part of Israel, then it's part of this covenant. But if you're going to be Esau and you're going to be living for the flesh, or you're going to be Ishmael, uh, guess what? It's not yours. If you want to be part of Israel, there's certain requirements. And by the way, you got a choice. Either you're, because you may not be born part of Israel. I'm talking about the family of Israel. And really, it goes beyond bloodline. It's about those who get grafted in. And whether it's of the descendants of the bloodline, or not of the bloodline, but part of the um, the foreigners, like that joined Israel. Okay. For Ishmael and his sons and his brothers and Esau, Yahweh did not cause to approach him, and he chose them not because they are the children of Abraham, because he knew them, and he chose Israel to be his people. He knew them. In other words, they didn't have the heart. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, because the heart's deceitful above all else. Like, what about me? Well, talk to a lot of people. So, well, God knows my heart. Yeah, he does. Absolutely, he does. And it's deceitful above all else. Verse 31, and he sanctified it and gathered it from amongst all the children of men. For there are many nations and many peoples, and all are his. And over all he has placed ruachot, in authority, to lead them astray from them. Wait a minute. Okay, we're almost out of time. He sanctified it and gathered it from amongst all the children of men, for there are many nations and many peoples, and all are his, and over all has he placed spirits in authority to lead them astray from him. Well, is that evil? I mean, these are evil spirits to lead people astray. He placed them in authority to lead them astray from him. But over Israel, he did not appoint any angel or ruach, or spirit, for he alone is their ruler, and he will guard them and require them at the hand of his angels and his spirits, his ruachot, and at the hand of all his powers, in order that he may guard them and bless them, that they may be his and he may be theirs from henceforth forever. We're gonna have to leave it at that. I'm gonna revisit that next time we get together. That's the only way to we're gonna, because it's really, that's really heavy. That's really loaded. So we're gonna go back over that. Well, thank you for being part of this journey, this walk through the book of Jubilees. I hope you got something out of it tonight. I certainly did. Found some very interesting information worth revisiting. But man, doesn't it just like blow your mind? Like the fire that's burning up as it passes by the pieces into ashes. Ooh, that's a powerful fire, powerful flame. My goodness. Well, glad you're here. We'll see you next time. This is John Craig with Life of Worship Ministries. Shalom.
If you missed today's show or want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all the other live Lamb show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network. We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the lambnetwork.tv website. I'm Sandi Craig, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.